Deplatforming is a form of socio-political activism that aims to stop a group or individual from expressing controversial thoughts or ideas by denying them access to the mediums by which they use to disseminate their messages. On this week's episode of the Infusion Breakdown Show, the Breakdown crew sat in among ourselves to discuss whether or not we should truly be concerned about deplatforming. Let's see what we come up with.
Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce to you our Black-owned Business of the Week, where we showcase quality Black-owned businesses for you to support every week. This week's business is Soulstar Tea and Wellness, based out of Virginia Beach, where they have high-quality artisan teas crafted using premium tea leaves, organic herbs, pure spices, dried fruit, and other natural ingredients. Available to you on their website to order, including two of my personal favorites, Sweet Mahogany Roast and Tropical Cider. If you're a tea lover, be sure to visit their site so you don't miss out.
So the question we have for today, should we be concerned with deplatforming? Comment below, let us know your opinion. We also have timestamps in the description below. Be sure to check them out.
Cool, so I can get things started. So I'll give a little bit of context and separate the incident and the concept that I'm trying to discuss today from each other, because I think that's important to do, set the stage a little bit. So after the removal from a variety of platforms by Donald Trump earlier this month, in I guess a direct result of the incidents that happened at the Capitol, a lot of content creators are concerned about the concept of deplatforming. And I think it's something that we should definitely be wary of moving forward and how we deal with things. I can say that for certain, some actions like the ones that took place and calls to incite violence and other crimes, for sure there should be some kind of action taken. But I just think we need to be measured and very careful about how we proceed forward. And I mean, with that in mind, this is the first time something major like that has really happened to that magnitude. But I feel like whenever something like that happens, you are setting a precedent. And so we just need to be really mindful about how we choose to do things like this, because you think about what's radical. So radical is often a term defined by the majority. And I think about like the opinions that we see, because all of us peruse like the comments. And so just going through like the Twitter threads, for example, oftentimes I feel like the voice of reason is in the minority. And so I think that's something to also not get too far away from, because right now it may be to our advantage. And I think that it is, I think there have been proper steps taken to hold individuals accountable for the things they say. But I'm also aware of the fact of the people who make rules, oftentimes it comes back to bite them in the ass. And so that's why I say that we should at least be very mindful and well thought out about how we proceed, especially us being content creators.
So we should be concerned.
Yeah. I mean, you don't think so?
No, my first question was going to be concerned how.
Well, I have another question before we answer that one to make it more evident. So what can get you deplatformed? And so that could be defined motion.
Oh, you said hate speech, right?
Yes, exactly. So hate speech. Now, who defines hate speech?
I guess the terms and policy or the conditions that whatever platform that you're on, I would say, really defines
Right.
it.
But it's so due to the unclear.
Because that was the problem. They said that him, and I guess whoever you're talking about violated their terms and service or terms and conditioning.
But due to those definitions and the subjective nature of hate speech, it's really hard to pin down. And then oftentimes you see like the corporations that err on the side of caution. I can't say that's exactly what happened in this particular instance with Donald Trump, but I can say on other instances with other lesser known users, because he was a really high profile individual. But it's really hard to say what exactly hate speech is. And then you think about big tech giants and social media companies, they typically lean more liberal. And I just want to get as a point of clarification, I don't identify as either a Democrat or a Republican. I vote traditionally as a Democrat, but I have views that are both liberal and conservative, just to take that argument out of there. But I've seen things to where, like, there's a video that these two guys did called Abba and Preach. And so Abba was explaining, like, he faced outrage when he gave the notion that women and men shouldn't compete against each other in sports, on the subject of like contact sports and things like that. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fallon Fox and Taika Brents, one of the three. But anyhow, so it's a transgender MMA fighter, and they fought a woman and ended up like fracturing her skull and breaking her bone, giving her a concussion. And so afterwards, she did like a post-fight interview, and she was saying that she had never been dominated physically like that by another woman before. Like there's an obvious strength disparity, but the fact that he said that was causing people outrage. So it's like, if you could say something as common sense as there's a strength disparity between men and women, and then potentially cause outrage and be classified as hate speech, what could cause you as a result of that to lose your platform or lose monetization, is that not something to be concerned about? There's more examples.
Was that, formally classified as hate speech?
It could be.
But was it?
Yeah, was it?
This was. It was a few years ago. That particular incident wasn't, because I don't think it was at its peak yet. Like we weren't.
But you gotta think. If you could think back to a couple of years ago, that was during the the empowerment movement. Like what was going on during that time? It was like a lot of like older rape cases, like the Bill Cosby, the
Me Too.
Ronaldo has the Me Too. Like during that movement at that time, like that was a very sensitive subject, and because people are already tender to the subject, an opinion like that, without much thought being expended on it, like it could come off as a bad opinion or an opinion that's gonna ruffle a few feathers, but it's not. I wouldn't classify that as hate speech. Like, I do think we should have a level of concern, but I don't think it needs to be a great level of concern. I think, when I was in taking family law, when I was taking family law, there was a portion of the course to where we just went over a contract and understanding or it's public law. I'm sorry, we were going over what a contract is, and like when we read Google's contract, it says like, should you experience anything to where you would sue Google for damages, you are entitled to the same amount that you pay for the platform.
Right.
You don't pay nothing for it. So at that point, like they're able to, and what Google allows you access to, I think is far worse than, what Donald Trump could ever say. But at the same time, like you're using these platforms for free. So you can't necessarily be outraged by what their classification of something may be. Like if he didn't get deplatformed, like say for example, if this dude didn't get deplatformed, people could still spam his account until it's their account is suspended. Like there is ways to get people quote unquote deplatformed without the hierarchy getting involved per se. But I think it is showing like a test of times, because I was thinking about this before I got in the shower, and I was like, the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution, when you think about freedom of speech and you think about all this, they never imagined and could even fathom social media, and they couldn't ever fathom a president sitting in the most powerful office in the world using these platforms to spew lies. Like, let's just get to the point. Like, it'd be different if there was court-backed evidence to say, the election was stolen, Russia didn't interfere, yada, 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 like whatever you want to say. Like, it'd be different if there was court-based evidence exonerating Donald Trump. Then you could understand there would be some validity behind what he's tweeting. But we're the people who are best known for integrity and who are putting out this information, their integrity is being put into question, and their integrity is being compromised by somebody who is abusing the power of the most powerful office in all of the free world. So there has to be some checks to say you are not above anybody. And that's why I don't necessarily see this concern, because on a very, very micro level, okay, we could say something wrong on the podcast, and YouTube can say we violated their terms of content and restrict us.
Exactly, I was going to bring that up.
There's more stuff for us to do. There's more ways for us to create content. We have.
It's still a detriment.
4 or 5 more platforms though.
You said there's more platforms though?
Correct.
But you think about that, like, so just like the barrier for entry for such a platform, like give me an example. Like even the ones that we currently are on, it could be a consequence of, I guess, advertisement and the particular people who we have gotten to immerse themselves in our content. But by far, YouTube is the most commonplace. Like, you think about our parents, it's much more common for people of their generation to be more familiar with YouTube than they are with Google Podcasts or something like that. Like, YouTube is more of a household name. So if you were to lose direct access to something like YouTube, that would be a bigger detriment to whatever you have going on. In our case, the podcast. So I say, like, what happens if you say something that gets classified as hate speech, and we can't monetize the video? Let's say we are a bigger podcast. We're at that point. We can't monetize it, or the video gets just outright taken down.
I mean, I would agree to disagree on that one, just because one, your target audience would be, someone who isn't aware of all the platforms. Like, there's plenty of, podcasters our age that don't use YouTube, that, push their content through Spotify and Apple Music, and then they provide their snippets on Instagram, because I'm not sure how, because I don't of course deal with that stuff, but you're able to advertise it. If you have more content than just your podcast, like if you can provide something of substance, then you already got the foot traffic, and of course the podcast or whatever it may be is just addition to your content per se. But like, I get what you're saying. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not 100% disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is, should you, like, it can get annoying, because say for example, if you do get banned from YouTube over something that you don't deem as hate speech, but the people who make the rules do, and then you go to Twitter, same thing happens. Like, I get the negative precedents that it sets, but I also think that these people that are in charge, there's checks and balances as well. Like, Donald Trump has been saying the dumbest shit for the past, if we want to go back to Obama's second term, we're coming up on the past decade. Like, he's been saying the dumbest shit for the past decade. It took him 11 years of saying the dumbest shit for this ultimatum to finally be given. It took literally rushing the Capitol, not calling Mexicans, rapists and murderers, not calling Muslims terrorists or whatever. It took him claiming the election was rigged and inciting a riot for him to get kicked off. Like, that's like, those are like extremes. Like, that shit we're never going to be able to do.
Yeah,
he's already said the worst of the worst and has gotten away with it.
I get that, but I'm saying, like, with the president, these are things that are happening and haven't been done before. And to your point about, like, okay, jumping to other platforms. So who owns YouTube? Google, right? Google's the world's largest search engine. So don't you think that if you get deplatformed according to YouTube's terms of service, and so don't you think that they could possibly, or more than likely, will derank you in their algorithm for their search engine? So doesn't it make it harder for people to access your content?
True. Yeah, that's true. But like I said, like, there should be ways to where, okay, so if you do get deplatformed and you reach out to Google and you dispute the terms in which you violated, like, that's why I said there's checks and balances in place. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I agree, like, there is a cause
to government, and we saw how that worked out.
Say it again.
I said there were checks and balances within our government. You see how that worked out. Like, Donald Trump, he served out the entirety of his term. Doesn't mean that
he served with a Republican majority. Like, Mitch McConnell is such a hard, like, GOP leader that he would much rather Donald Trump stay in office the entire time rather than give the Democrats the victory of getting impeachment. Like, you see as well, it literally took him storming, Mitch McConnell's place, figuratively speaking, which was, the Capitol, for him to get a reaction. And even then, Mitch McConnell is still in Donald Trump's quarter by delaying the trial. He comes on and says, "Hey, I'm requesting that they delay the vote or whatever, so his lawyers have enough time to prepare a case." Like, he's still a hardcore Republican at the end of the day. So same way Obama tried to get Merrick Garland on the bench, someone far better than what's his name? I can't even remember the dude's name. The very first judge or justice Trump put on the bench. I think he had like very, very little experience. But you see how like
Gorsh or Gorsuch?
yeah, Gorsuch. I think it's Gorsuch. I think Gorsuch was the first, yeah. Because I know he put a woman on the bench as well that had like little to no experience, and
Amy Coney
that's even like that's even worse. But you saw how Obama's last year, Obama had over a year left in office, and he wanted Merrick Garland on the bench, and McConnell said, "Yeah, we're not even going to listen." But what's his name? McConnell literally opened up the door for Trump to get a few more. So like the checks and balances exist, but there's also partisanship at the same time that does get in the way of it.
Yeah, I feel like with what you were saying prior to us getting sidetracked about the government aspect of bipartisanship and checks and balances, is I think that you're focusing more on the fact that these things haven't happened yet than the fact that they could. When it comes to deplatforming.
True, like no, I don't think I'm more or less focused on. Well, I would agree that to an extent, I would agree partially because it hasn't happened yet. But like I'm aware of what could happen, but I don't try to concern myself with what could happen because I see the benefit in what has happened with the first little taste of deplatforming. Like people get kicked off Twitter and Facebook left and right, and like it's not nothing new, but to see it on that platform, like, or I'm not gonna say of that magnitude, like it's like, okay, you can't get away with everything. Like it lets you know you truly can't. So that's why I'm saying, like, I am aware of what could potentially happen, like if there was a new terms and conditions to be rolled out, and whatever. But I will also say that at the same time, should any of them roll out any of these new terms and conditions, there would be, essentially a court case that could follow up and say, hey, this stuff infringes on free speech. Like regardless of if Google, YouTube, Facebook, and all this stuff is privately owned, they are still monetized off public dollars. So they do have to comply with the Constitution in one way because they benefit from public policy or public monetary funds or whatever, or public money, whatever it may be. Like they do benefit in some way, shape, or form from that. So my view on it would be that you can't benefit, publicly from something and then not choose to follow, the
public guidelines.
Public guidelines per se.
I get that. That's a good point too. But I also think that one thing that's particularly prominent or apparent to me is the fact that censorship really doesn't have any regard for context. So even with us, for example, I was thinking about the video that we couldn't get paid ads for. So a few weeks ago, last week actually, when I was talking to Josh about the episode we did with Tanner and Rome, we couldn't get that with paid ads because we were talking about drugs on there. But if you looked at the actual context of it, we were talking about whether or not it was ethical for people to be promoting it in their music or not. We weren't advocating for drugs by any means. And so that's one thing that I've also noticed. And then like another incident with Abba, one of the guys that I had cited earlier, he had a video flagged for hate speech when he was talking about the death of his father. It got flagged as hate speech and they shadow banned it or took it down.
What is the, and this is more or less out of ignorance, like what is the channels to go through from that? Like, are you able to dispute it?
I mean, you definitely could, but have you ever tried to dispute anything like that?
Nah, because I've never been kicked off nothing. I never had nothing.
Well, I have not been kicked off of things, but I've tried to dispute things. So with doing the advertisements on Instagram, so Facebook owned entity, so doing the paid ads there, setting up a campaign. So I select the post of something that we're talking about, and then I want to promote it. And then so sometimes it gets approved, sometimes it gets rejected. In the instance where it's rejected, I have won some of these, but it's not too frequent. Like they'll say something we said was flagged as inappropriate, or for whatever reason. Like I could pull some of the stuff up and read it off to you now, but the point being is that it was flagged, and it's pretty difficult in order to win that. And they don't have to give you any kind of reason for it. They could just say no. So they don't have that transparency for why exactly things are happening. They'll just say, okay, this is classified as hate speech, or this is classified as inappropriate. It's the same things like somebody will post a picture, like a woman could post a picture with her in full clothes, and somebody reports it for nudity, and the picture gets taken down. And it's like, what the hell? She has clothes on. This isn't nudity. Why are you flagging me? It's the same thing.
Right.
So it's like, how do you combat that?
Yeah, I can understand that.
Like, that completely slipped my mind. We actually experienced that.
So
I wonder has anybody sued them yet for that though? Because technically speaking, like, people are paying for the service in a way. Like, people are indirectly paying for the service through ads. Like, not necessarily saying you have to pay to have the account, but you're paying for these ads to go out, or attempting to pay, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could that not affect somebody's livelihood, their income per se?
Absolutely. And just so you know, I'm not bullshitting you. Like, right here, these are all rejected attempts. So the last the last 5 that we've done have been rejected, or something like that.
is this on?
Yeah.
Is this on
Instagram.
Instagram? Okay.
Yes, sir. And so, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this stuff, it is pertinent. It does apply to us specific as content creators. Like I said, I stated in the preface, forget Donald Trump. I really don't care about him. But it's the idea, the concept that these platforms can do things like that. And so, like, I differentiate in the beginning on inciting violence and doing things of that nature, but just stuff that's based in subjectivity of you think that this is inappropriate, or things that you think that shouldn't be said, or because it offends a certain demographic of people, even though the majority might not be offended by it, or like just the basis of offending people in general. Like, I think that's a little bit of a silly notion, but that does happen, and we've already seen it.
Right.
So Brian, you're saying that he shouldn't be?
No, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I don't give a damn about Donald Trump.
I know. I'm asking you about Donald Trump though. What about in that case right there? Do you feel he should be deplatformed or no?
He was inciting violence, so I said that he would fit the definition what I just said. Yes.
Okay, and you agreed, Des?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he's against that.
Doesn't that actually go against what you guys are talking about as far as in the role models episode, when it shouldn't be up to the artists of how the people?
Nope. That's apples and oranges, big dog. I ain't even gonna let you try. That's apples and oranges, big dog.
Why is that?
That's the most powerful man in the free world.
There's people that look up. It's people that look up to rappers more than they look up to the president.
It's a difference
Okay,
between
we're talking
looking
about
up to and being in a leadership
75 plus
position.
million people.
One at a time,
Like,
please.
Quavo would love to have 75 million people listen to his music. This man Donald Trump literally had 70 plus million people come out and vote for him. Okay. We said rappers. Quavo was the first rapper to come to my mind, but like, these rappers would love to have, a consistent 75 million plus. Like,
We're not talking about the audience though. We're talking about what the person is saying though, right? It doesn't matter how many people. So it matters now because of how many people is in that person's corner.
to an extent, yes. Like, I get what you're trying to say, but it's the most powerful man in all of the free world. Someone who literally has the ability to flip democracy as we know it on its head. Like, that's the thing. Like, I get what you're trying to imply.
So
That's
who
what I
you
said,
are does
apples
matter.
to oranges. Huh?
So what you're saying does matter, and who you are does matter.
Who you are does matter.
Because it seemed like you both were trying to say in the role models episode that it didn't matter.
Nah, I'm not gonna let you get away with that, big dog. Like, you can't take out of context what we say when we're not speaking of something of this magnitude. To an extent, yes,
I was actually
this
is the funny fucking thing about this, because I was actually about to text you niggas about Donald fucking Trump, about him being a role model too, before even this episode even came up. So I'm glad we even talked about this. But yes, about him being a role model, if he's actually a role model, and what he says is basically what we talked about with rappers.
No. And so the same question you asked Desmond about the following, I don't think that has any. Oh my
God, you guys are so lucky I didn't look at that fucking episode before I came up here.
I don't think that bears any consequence on the person's following. The difference between the two, and I hope this is clear, is that the role of president, the highest office in the free world, is a voluntary leadership position. Leadership is inseparable from that. You being a rapper is not a leadership position. It's not. It's not a prerequisite. It's not an assumption. It's not in the job description. You're not made a leader just because you're a rapper. If you choose to take on that mantle yourself, that's something entirely different. That's what we're saying. So if you want to loop back into the episode, I don't think Travis Scott gives a damn about being a leader. I don't think Future does. They just do what they do. They're musicians, entertainers.
I don't think we can say that it's possible.
Agree to disagree.
It's definitely possible they could want to be looked at as a leader, though.
What are they leading? What are they leading?
Leaders of the rap game. I don't fucking know. The it depends on them, but it's possible though.
I get what you're saying. I get that Travis Scott, Future, all of these people can literally amassing a following and then realize, okay, I'm a leader. Being a leader is literally part of, like, you're the leader of the free world. You're the leader of the executive branch. You're the leader of the United States Navy. All of these things are fucking A5 Wagyu. Being a rapper and being a leader, and that is goddamn Food Lion ribeye. Like, one of these things is available to common people, Food Lion. One of these things that is a shit ton of money that only the best of the best is gonna get, that's that A5 Wagyu, if you're familiar with steaks. Like, being a president of the United States and then comparing the roles of leadership versus being a speaker of your community as a rapper, or being literally the president of the free world, not just people that are Americans look at, but North Korea, and whether it be in a negative light or not, Russia, the EU, people in Africa, even people that benefit from aid, look at what the president does. Look at the Latin American countries. Who falls under U.S.'s sovereignty, or falls under the U.S. branch?
Puerto Rico. You're saying they're
Costa
like
Rica,
the territories?
Costa Rica.
Puerto Rico's a territory, isn't it?
It is, but I'm referring to like Costa Rica. Isn't Costa Rica they're like under? It is, because when that hurricane hit Puerto Rico, they did send federal employees over to go help. But I'm referring to like Costa Rica and then all these places in Latin America. Like, everybody's looking at what the president does. Not everybody's looking at what Travis Scott does. Not everybody's looking. But if you're
a big artist and you have big influence even outside the United States, overseas, like example, G-Unit still has a major presence overseas. Could that influence still? I'm trying.
They're in a different industry. It's like entertainment and then government. They don't mix well, like oil and water.
But you can still have. You might have this. Of course, you're not gonna have the same influence as a Donald Trump, aka a president or something like that. But they can still have some type of huge influence, though. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, it comes with the music. Like, it comes as part of the industry. Like,
okay, so it might not be on the magnitude, of course, like creating nukes or anything like that. But I'm saying that the influence is still the same, or not the same, but it could still be a major influence, though, right?
Like, you can easily look at Michael Jordan. Like, Michael Jordan was somebody that had the influence, and he knew he had the influence, and he played the game. Like, he had the stainless record, because even when he did shit, it was swept under the rug. Like, I get what you're saying in that aspect. Like, if you want an example, Michael Jordan is the perfect example. If you want another example, look at Kobe Bryant. When the rape stuff came out back in 2003, or sexual assault stuff came back out in 2003, like, look at how that tainted Kobe Bryant, the person. But then you also see the power of his influence, that as his years progressed, people weren't necessarily caught up in that aspect. Like, people still looked at him for what Mamba mentality was. They still looked at him as that serial winner, serial leader, all these things. Like, yes, you can have that leadership, but that is leadership that is acquired through the course of being able to have something that is tradable. That tradable is people paying their hard-earned dollars for your entertainment, what you can provide for them. We're not trading nothing for Donald Trump. Like,
some people traded a vote for him.
A vote is priceless. It's worth the most, but it's worth nothing at the same time.
Some of us don't spend money. Like, I'm trying to.
You do though. If you listen to streams, you're paying that.
No, I was going back to the basketball aspect. As far
as if you're watching TV, you're paying that basketball player money, because these TV deals come from how many viewers are watching this product. NBA can pay, the NBA can literally pay, or the TV deal with the NBA can literally be as lucrative as it is because so many people are watching this product. Kind of goes into like the WNBA's wages versus the NBA wages. Like NBA players are able to pay this, are able to be afforded this much because of the amount of people that tune in. And of course, if people are tuning in and saying, you know, you want to watch this, like, case in point is the when Donald Trump said we're boycotting the NFL, and all his supporters like, yeah, we're no longer watching NFL. If they want to kneel, they can kneel, but I'm not going to watch it no more. Like, stuff like that is done because Donald Trump understands that viewers equates to dollars. Like, he understands that his leadership is that much to where I'm not going to give you guys the chance to not entertain, but influence anyone. So I'm going to say, people don't watch this. I'm going to say, hey, don't watch this. Like, we're going to make this deal the worst deal possible. Whatever TV deal the NFL has, we're going to make it the worst deal possible because we're going to try and cut the viewership in half to where that deal is no longer worth the money that they're paying the NFL.
Okay. I believe you guys are picking and choosing, but all right.
I don't see it that way.
As far as just because he has a bigger influence. All right.
No, it's because of the position.
Yeah, position. I still feel like there's a whole bunch of people, a lot of people in the United States, a lot of kids in the United States look up to rappers and entertainers more than they look up to the president, though. That's how I feel. And I'm just speaking.
Right,
I'm just strictly speaking about kids in the United States. And of course, this could be something completely different outside the United States and different countries and everything. But I'm just talking about people in the United States, and I'm talking about their influence might not be on the same magnitude, but they still have the same influence. But since Donald Trump was saying something that I guess was inciting violence, or what someone would say was inciting violence, he just can't do it. Oh, okay.
There was a subversion against democracy where you're alluding to with the kids listening to music. You're just indoctrinating children with certain ideas that aren't necessarily materializing to the same things. Because like you can listen to, like we all listen to music that had violence in it, and sex and drugs and stuff growing up when we're young and underage. But how many of us actually went out and perpetrated those things?
I think that's up to the person. That's up to the individual.
It is. But as a
So
leader,
if a group of dumbass people are listening to another dumbass person, they're going to more than likely follow that dumbass person. But if something like the three of us are listening to lyrics, we're not going to necessarily go out and shoot somebody because we know, like, what's the point? We're smarter than that.
So please.
I just feel that the whole, if we're just speaking about the whole, I guess, deplatforming in general, I think it's really just an attack on free speech, no matter how stupid or bad someone sounds. And it shouldn't be up to the platform to ban what the person is saying. Like, if the people were smart enough, they wouldn't give attention to that person saying it.
Yes.
And I feel that's the best way to change a person's behavior, just to ignore them completely, especially if we're talking about a social media platform, because most of that is attention anyway. And the platforms might as well shut down if they're worried about like lies or bad influences, because we are our biggest influence. The person is smart, but when everyone gets together, they become negatively influenced and become fucking idiots. So if you have to regulate what people say on social media, you might as well not even have it at all.
I think there's a minimum necessity. Like the same thing with regular free speech, like verbal speech, there's limitations. It's not entirely free. And so that's what I was basing my answer off of earlier, where I said about violence and inciting particular crimes. Like if you're directly calling for that, yeah, I feel like that's something to where there should be some form of intervention. But just saying something that's an opinion that you disagree with
should be some form of impeachment. That's what it should be if the president is doing that. But that's
correct.
Just something else. Okay.
So so I kind of want to get into the topic of like protection against this. So just on the subject of demonetizing and deplatforming. So when Joe Rogan fell under fire last year, so people were upset because he was having certain conservative people on his podcast, which you're not supposed to talk to people that have different opinions from yourself, or when he had conspiracy theorists on, and people were calling for Spotify to terminate the deal, their partnership with him. And ultimately, I know you guys are going to say, well, did it happen? No, but the fact that it is within the realm of possibility, I think Joe Rogan is big enough to where the fact it wouldn't affect him. But I think somebody like any other smaller podcast might have been able to survive stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on protecting yourself as a content creator against things to where you could potentially lose your platform and your livelihood or your audience as a consequence of saying something that may not be the most popular opinion, or might just go against the community guidelines, even if it may be factually based.
So how do you feel about that?
How do you protect against it?
Oh, how do we protect it?
I mean, because what Desmond was saying earlier is just go to a different platform, go to a different platform. Well, I just explained about the algorithm, and really, one alternate one is I'm a really big advocate for creating your own. So like from the ground up is like, okay, so for what us that would look like having a breakdown website and backing up all the videos, because like if we lose one of our videos, it's nowhere else. Like we don't have it, because I think, Josh, how do you store those? Because I have local copies, but every now and then like I delete them in batches. But after you post the video, you don't keep it, do you?
No, it's too much too much stuff on my computer.
Exactly. So if one of our episodes was to get deleted, that's just content lost. And so one method to protect against that is creating our own website to where we could have like strictly just our content, like our website, our own.
You're referring to if somebody comes and deletes our video, right?
Yes,
Like,
if YouTube decides to start deleting.
Do they do that though, or do they just block it? Because what I've seen, only they never delete the video, they just block it and don't have anybody view it.
I don't know. I've never had a video deleted like that. Well, anyhow, it's not public facing. If whether it's deleted or blocked, the content is not accessible to the audience.
Gotcha. Because if it's blocked though, you can re-edit it and go and upload it again. That's why I was making that.
I get that, because with your movie reviews, that's something that comes up often. It's like, okay, well, due to the music or the copyright here, then you have to do X, Y, and Z. You upload it, we get another email, rinse and repeat. But it's just like, you can take, I really feel like, so that's one of the things I'm going to be working on soon, is shifting over to our own personal website to where we have that. Like, we still upload to YouTube and stuff, but I feel like that's a necessity. And like a lot of other content creators, especially ones like Dr. Boyce Watkins, he was a big advocate for this new website. It's called blagenough.com. And so it's like their own media platform. So other people in the content creation space, they're starting to notice the trends within platforming and suppression, and they're starting to move away from that. But then again, you hit the same wall of the algorithm. So like if you are blocked on one and it happens to go against the guidelines of YouTube, well, the odds are it's the same guidelines for Google. So it makes it more difficult for you to get people to your audience, or get your audience to your platform or your content. So what do you propose? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. It sounds like we just a small fish in the ocean.
Yeah.
That's literally what it boils down to. Like, yeah, I was bringing up the the go to another platform argument, and you rightfully had your rebuttal for it, but I did feel even at the same time like we're small fish in the ocean, like,
which makes us more susceptible to things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't plan on being a small fish for long. Like that's not the goal. The goal is to continue to grow.
Compliance versus fear-based decisions.
How so?
Either we try and produce content just organic that just flows as it should, and we're not cursing, or we force ourselves to try and make content that is in compliance, socially acceptable, even though it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be willing to compromise with that. And just with your example about the fear-based decision versus the compliance, let's say so Josh said nigga like a few minutes ago, I think. I'm pretty certain. So let's say this video gets how many billion of views do I want? 3 billion views, which we can monetize that at that point. Let's say that. But then just the fact that Josh said it once, and I just said it when I was repeating him, that we can't get monetized off the video. That's hugely problematic.
Edit it out, bro. You know what some people do though? Like I've seen it a lot. Like exactly.
Or make funny sounds.
And as childish as that is, like now that you're explaining the algorithm, like now I understand why. Like that would be just straight up compliance. Like that technically I'm in compliance. Like I didn't change how how I approach my podcast or how I approach my content, I made the necessary adjustments in my video editing phase to where it's still the same content, but I'm competing with the algorithm now at the same time, like addressing what needs to be addressed to where it's not flagged.
How many times are you going to jump through hoops?
I mean, this is some people's livelihood.
It doesn't stop there, because like you think about certain things. Like I'm pretty much on YouTube just about every day, and I listen to it, have it on the background while I'm at work and stuff like that. I notice things with other content creators, and so, for example, you can't have the word weapon in your videos. Like you can't say it if you're getting monetized, or if you have it in the title. Like I saw a video for like top 10 wrestling weapons or something like that, like because I was on like a wrestling channel, and they had to spell weapon with an asterisk for the E, because you can't have that word. And so I feel like that's fairly ridiculous. Like you have to censor yourself when you're saying stuff like that. And that's what I was saying earlier about robbing the context, because it wasn't advocating going and getting weapons and doing violent acts. It was just a matter of fact. Like wrestling is a scripted form of entertainment, and you can't factually account something that occurs as part of it.
I don't know, man. Maybe they do stuff like that because of how sick people are. Like they understand that a lot of children and minors are on their platform, and the ability to just access the content by typing in a keyword, they try and minimize it in that aspect. Like I think it's more or less like as much intended as like a preventative measure, but it's like a broad preventative measure that really, like you said, doesn't have any context on what's being spoke on. Because that is, it's pretty interesting. But at the same time, like I could also see like, okay, if you're talking about a AK, we're talking about a quote unquote
a laser.
If we're talking about something you utilize for harm, and a child goes in and it enters in this phrase that you would utilize for harm, and they now know how to operate a RPG or a Robert Paul George or Adam Kalishnikov, what is it? How do you say it?
I'm not certain.
It's not 80. 80 is 8.
What are you trying to say?
Siete?
I was gonna say 47.
47?
47.
47, yeah. So I was on the right path. Siete. 47. They now know how to do this stuff. So I could understand like why it's so broad without context, but at the same time, like for people that are able to have a good life based off of content creation, like you rightfully so, you are supposed to, I guess, be at this point, because for us, I don't think much of it because this isn't my main gig. Like I have different avenues of creating money outside of my job, so I don't necessarily think of it that aspect. Like if you'd have been like, hey man, the SEC is thinking about banning all retail traders, I'd have been like, oh my god. I would have been concerned. But now I can understand where you're coming from. Like this dialogue and the topic itself deserves a lot more deserves a lot more thought, because there is a great percentage of YouTubers that have amassed a following to where they can monetize their views. So yeah, you're right on that.
And that's what I was hoping to get out of it, because it's easy to see something as silly as, okay, they block somebody off of there and just shrug your shoulders. But you have to think about the greater implications and how it could potentially come back around full circle in a way that is unfavorable to you, because almost always it does.
True.
Yeah, I would say compromise at the best you can, or as much as you want, because, or other than that, probably find new ways to actually advertise your stuff. Just find other ways to actually do it that doesn't involve the YouTube algorithms or anything like Google or anything like that. So just try to advertise it somewhere else and try to compromise as much as possible. But yeah, you don't want to like keep doing that and like sacrifice what you're doing, like your artwork, anything like that. But yeah, I would try to sacrifice it. I will compromise as much as possible. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned artwork, because that's really heavy in the art community too.
Really?
Yeah, like on Instagram.
Like they block our artwork because it's like, oh, interesting.
Like you better have a nipple showing in your artwork. They gotta take like the little the smudge tool to cover it up or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like art is really heavily censored. Not saying like within the art community, I also find it problematic that they feel like they have to have everyone has to be naked in order for it to be art, which that's not the case. I feel like you can have like it could be artwork with the person without clothes, with or without the person with clothes. So for just making people nude for the sake of them being nude is ridiculous to me, but that's neither here nor there. But within the art community, that is a problem that they do face.
Yeah, I say compromise though, but it just kind of reminds me of the last movie review I put up, which is Man of Steel, and I was almost not gonna post it this week or last week anyway because there was copyright issues. I was like, damn, I just want to go to bed because sometimes I end up in these situations when I'm like, I'm trying to go, I'm fucking tired. Now I gotta go back and edit more of this video, which I thought I finished. So I was like, I was thinking about just not even posting it. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna compromise and actually do this. And I actually ended up posting it, actually ended up going through and everything, and actually got good reviews from that video. So yeah, I think it's definitely better to compromise, but as much as you want though, not too much to the point where you're sacrificing, but definitely to compromise though.
My question is,
say that again?
You were telling who?
No, I was telling one of my family members about this because he was asking me for advice, but I was telling him something like that. It was relationship advice, but yeah.
Now, what did you compromise? Like you said with your movie review, were you compromising the content itself? What you said, what you actually verbalized in the video, the images, or was it because of like you had too much of the video? Because I don't feel like that's.
It was too much of the video.
You don't think you're saying, but I don't think. No, you definitely you were fitting the guidelines, but I don't think that's the same in the sense of what we are. Well, at least I'm thinking, because that means changing your content. So let's say if you had said something in the video that was against the guidelines, so you had to take out your words, I feel like that would be more of a direct infringement on what we're talking about.
Okay,
as opposed to saying you have 13 seconds of this video. Like, of course, I guess to a lesser degree, you do have to adjust. Like, that's definitely a compromise and fitting within the guidelines, but it's not as, I don't feel like it's a big of an infringement on your rights as a creator, even though you are on their platform.
Okay, yeah, I got you. I agree with that. Yeah, but I've never had to actually take something out what I said though.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Geez, I feel like this 20th century is going to have a lot of
cases
that revolve around free speech. I feel like we were experiencing cancel culture throughout the 2010s anyway, but I feel like this decade is probably going to be full of cases before the Supreme Court. Yeah.
I feel like companies are so scared now that they're taking action as opposed to when the government traditionally would. So like when it comes to a lot of things, with for example the people who were out there at the Capitol, for example, some of the people before they were arrested, their jobs had already fired them. So instead of them being arrested on the spot, as they should have been, the corporations were forced to take action. And so
they would just take off that day? How did that work?
You could just look at the PTO for every company. You're right, Josh.
Because it was a Wednesday, and I remember thinking like, damn, it was all off for work. Like, how did that work? Like, I don't know. Like, I see going up there on a Saturday, but damn, on a Wednesday though, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, like those are some zealous folks, but just the fact that they did that. And
did you guys hear about Rudy Giuliani or him being sued?
I did, but I didn't know for what.
He was being sued by the voting machine company because he just kept talking about how they was changing votes at the last minute and everything like that. So they're suing him for $1.3 billion. So yeah.
Sounds all right. Sounds fair enough. Sounds fair enough. I mean, what they'll probably do is look at, what their revenue gain is and, how much they stand to lose based off of, him if he keeps up the speech. Like,
yeah,
that makes sense.
So yeah, so I definitely agree with you talking about there's gonna be a lot of litigation talking about regarding free speech stuff. Yeah, because he was just yeah.
Like, I feel like the 2010s, like 10 to 20, like the lines were so blurred with what's free speech that I mean, not a lot of people gonna continue to sit on the sidelines and take these hits. Like at some point, somebody is going to exercise their right.
Do you guys think the Constitution will ever be updated at all? Yeah, amended or updated?
No, it's never updated. Or I'm sorry, I'm not gonna say it's updated all the time with new precedent, but I don't think that there's gonna be a new amendment, something of that magnitude.
Or a change
Because
like
they're
what free speech really means or anything like that?
yeah, like the vagueness of the Constitution is done on purpose. Like all that stuff is done on purpose because they understood that there's going to be a need in the future for you to be able to expand on what this amendment or what your Bill of Rights are. Like that stuff is done like that with intent.
I think what you were saying about the 2010s, and I guess particularly now, being unprecedented in the sense of the litigation and lawsuits that we're going to see surrounding free speech. And I think about how that applied to Obama, who is, to my recollection, he was the first socially active or social media active president. So the way
Not
that
just socially altogether, because he was going to he was speaking at places and stuff. Like he wasn't just on social media. Like he was actually going to like gatherings and speaking.
Okay.
As well.
I'll take that, but that's outside of the scope of my point that I was making. But you're right, I guess. If I'll fact check you later. But he was the first president who actually used social media to a regular capacity, but he didn't use it in the same way that Donald Trump did. Like he was making major statements, whereas Obama may have used and comment on particular things, but it wasn't like he was driving policy or calling for specific action. To my recollection, it wasn't. Twitter was not as a big of a part of the Obama administration as it was for Donald Trump.
I think if you remember, like when Obama was president, he even used to release like yearly playlists or summertime playlists. Like he used social media for the funness that it was,
but not for the actual job.
Exactly. Like he used it as we used it back in like the early 2010s. Damn, we feel old as hell saying that. We're officially in the roaring 20s though.
Josh, we can't hear you.
I said roaring 20s. That's funny. But anything else you guys want to add?
We're about to see a whole bunch of American influencers moving to Dubai.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because, bro, I mean, Dubai is like, think about how much is going on in Dubai. Like UFC just, I'm not gonna say they packed up and literally moved to Dubai during COVID, but like I know a lot of the people that I follow as far as like in the cryptocurrency and forex game, like they either live in Dubai or they live in LA. But like just from what I see on their stories, like Dubai is a beautiful place.
Yeah, but they also don't have. It's an entirely different country, and I don't know about the specific their rights in their governing body or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure the constitutions we have, it doesn't apply the same over there. Like they don't have. It's much different. So is that really a trade-off they're willing to make?
I'll make it. Hey, look, we'll be doing this podcast in like 4 or 5 years, and all you'll see in the background is just 30,000 feet up in, well, not 30,000, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but like 10,000 feet up in the air, and all you see is a blue sky behind me, and then below me you just see the desert.
This nigga's gonna be in the Empire State Building.
Yeah, you'll be
Khalifa.
You'll be 10,000 feet high, and then when Josh asks the question, you're gonna have to filter your response and have a 3-minute lag on before you answer. Before there's certain things you can and can't say. Kind of like the guy from the WHO. Did you guys see that video?
Mm-hmm. I didn't see that.
It was one of the senior directors or senior executives from the World Health Organization. He was asked about Taiwan, and so the World Health Organization is heavily backed and influenced by China, and so China doesn't recognize Taiwan's sovereignty as their own independent nation, because I think they gained their independence in like 1949. And so they asked about why, but they asked about the exclusion of Taiwan in the World Health Organization, and the director, he feigned ignorance for like 10 seconds. He didn't say anything, and then the woman asked him the question again, and then he said, "I couldn't hear you," and that happened again. Then he was like, "That's okay. because she was going to repeat herself. She said, "That's okay. We can go to the next question." So she asked him again, and then he hung up. And then they called back, and he refused to answer that question. He just said, if I was to get the global pandemic, if I was to get afflicted with the sickness, then I would want to be treated in China. So he was essentially being a puppet. He wasn't speaking factually. Probably that could have been a direct contradiction of his own opinion too. But it's an entire video about that. And I think that actually I'm gonna share it with you guys after this.
I can understand that because WHO, that's like a the states make up those, like the money that the states give, they make up that body. So it's not like people are going to go there and just speak within their own interest. They're always going to speak within state interest.
Just join the World Health Organization again.
Yeah. Well, that was part of the reason why we left, because I think the U.S., which is probably why China is now the main contributor, because the U.S. was the main contributor before Trump left.
Which makes sense. I'm curious when the director, the current one of the World Health Organization, wants to appoint it. Okay, we don't have to keep this running, but yeah, I'm gonna send that link off to y'all.
All right. But is that anything else you guys want to add, though? You have anything else?
I have lots of stuff, but not enough time.
Okay. You got an album of the week?
Nah, I actually started a new book. I think y'all probably saw it on my story, but I'm reading The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Been trying to knock down, 2 books a month. So I'm trying to get 24 throughout the course of 2021. But if I get more, then y'all will see everything I read. Just finished. I gave it to my mom actually because we've been sharing books. But I actually finished Between the World and Me. Man, that was a book that when I do get it back, I'm gonna read it again because it's one. Shout out to Larry for referencing it and making me want to pick it up and actually read it for once rather than skimming through it.
Nice. All right, be sure to check it out. If you guys like the discussion, don't forget to hit the like button. We're gonna see you guys next week. Peace.
But while you're here, be sure to check out other great content from the Breakdown crew, including previous episodes of the podcast, Joshua vs. Movies, Joshua vs. Music, and of course, haven't forgotten about my plant lovers, Feel the Love. Just check out this begonia.